Hello and welcome.
Hello.
Thank you, Nick. Hello and welcome. I'm Lindsay Nelwer-Benowich, and I'm so excited to welcome you tonight to the 9th Annual Faith in Action Fall event. In the past 9 years, the Faith in Action Project has served as a catalyst to move people out of poverty by educating and empowering faith and community leaders. As evidenced by your presence here tonight, we're all excited for this theme of hope and healing for our next generation. And we couldn't do it without our supporters and sponsors and partners in the community. Our supporters and sponsors, Mike and Sue Smith Family Fund, the Pettigrew Foundation, Lumina Foundation, and the Noise Foundation. So join me in a round of applause for them. To start off this evening, before we dig in, I would like to learn just a little bit more about our audience. If you could do me a favor and scan the QR code that's in your program or in the screen above, and we'll ask just a few quick questions. First question, if age is only a state of mind, which category best describes your state of mind right now? I forgot to put other. That would have been funny, too. Okay, no tormented teenager. Maybe that's positive. Maybe the energy level will be positive this evening. Okay, you can continue to vote. Our next question, I have attended Faith in Action events how many times? That works. Okay, and then our final question, how hopeful do you feel that you or your organization can make a difference in poverty by supporting the next generation? Great. Well, thank you for engaging with us. We will use the same QR code to ask for feedback at the end of the event. So we appreciate your input. It really does matter. Now to kick off our program, I'd like to introduce our special leader, President David Malott. President Malott has remained steadfast to the commitment of CTS to advancing love, justice, and liberation around the world. So please join me in a warm welcome for President Malott.
Thank you, Lindsay. Good evening, friends of God and friends of CTS. I'm deeply grateful for your presence here tonight. We have been preparing for this moment for over a year. Last week, the majority of those who voted elected an administration whose policies and rhetoric conflict with the values and perspective of Christian Theological Seminary. Equally disturbing, millions of eligible voters didn't vote at all. Those in our country who are already socially vulnerable will become even more vulnerable, and more lives will be put in jeopardy with the direction that the new administration is planning to take. I know that many of us are thinking long and hard about what that portends, not only for our nation, but for ourselves and for those we love. The feelings of despair, disappointment, anger, and hurt are real. And there are too many messages attempting to provide hope without acknowledging the real and long-lasting ramifications of this election. This is not a matter of figuring out how to get through the next 4 years. The course that is being put forward will impact generations of those who live in the United States, if not the world. As all of this is happening, CTS is celebrating its 100th anniversary. And the school's founding continues to inspire and guide us. And I want to share with you just a bit about it in the context of its birth. In 1910, 114 years ago, Madam C.J. Walker, businesswoman, hair care entrepreneur, philanthropist, activist, and first documented female millionaire in America, relocated her business to where? Indianapolis. 14 years later, in 1924, the Indiana Ku Klux Klan was one of the largest chapters in the country. That same year, 1924, our ancestors in faith established the Butler School of Religion, which would eventually become Christian Theological Seminary. At its founding, the school promised to offer theological education to all students on an equal basis. And you can see this when you see the pictures of the early classes of those students. CTS continues to build upon this foundation of social and religious transformation. And you can see these values, you can see this commitment embodied in the values that we live under, which include all people are created in the image of God and therefore have inherent worth and dignity. And working for justice for all is an imperative for Christian life and faith. I repeat that. It's an imperative for Christian faith and life. We are not wavering from these values. In fact, now is the time to embody them loudly and boldly. The world needs CTS. The world needs you. And we need each other. When we began planning for this evening, we decided that we should host this event following the elections and with a speaker who could bring a powerful word to us. I can think of no one better than the Reverend Dr. Freddie Haynes III. I pray that God will provide balm to our hearts and light to our path through our speaker and through the panel conversation this evening. Welcome, and God bless you.
Thank you, David. Now it's our time to turn our attention to the panel discussion. We've invited local leaders who are championing efforts around providing equitable opportunities for youth and their families and quality education. So I'm so excited to have this local panel here and to learn from them. To moderate this conversation, we've asked Amar Patel. He brings a lot of experience through his time at Teach for America and now his current role as principal and founder of a social impact firm, Stronger Communities. Help me welcome Amar Patel to the stage.
once a teacher, always a teacher, so I'll enunciate as needed. So I want to welcome our panelists to the stage. To start, Pastor Jeffrey Johnson, Senior Pastor of Eastern Star Church. Please go ahead and come on up. Mayat Lands, the founder and school leader of Rooted School Indianapolis, a school located within Eastern Star Church. Joe Bowling, Executive Director of Inglewood Community Development Corporation. And Dr. Kiana Warren, the Chief Executive Officer of Purdue Polytechnic Schools. Please come to the stage. So I'm excited to have this conversation with leaders of faith, community development leaders, and education experts and leaders, and how they are working together to transform outcomes in the communities and with the students and families that they work with. The future, it's often said that the future of a community can be predicted by the well-being, the skills, and the ambitions of its young people. It's probably why in Kenya and Tanzania, peoples there often begin when greeting each other. The first question that's asked is, and how are the children? Young people are our pathway forward, and we are all concerned with the critical challenges they face. Perhaps the most important question we could be asking here in Indianapolis to portend the future of our community is, how are the children? That's going to be a theme of this evening. Amidst all the challenges we know children are up against, we hear and read about them in the news, headlines often, we know that there must be glimmers of hope. There are proof points of possibility at a classroom level, at a school level, at a congregational level, that a different reality is not only possible, but happening in our midst. And so our charge this evening is to learn from leaders that are creating opportunities for kids and their families that buck the trends that we hear in the headlines. To dig deeper in not only what are the ideas, but what are the leadership practices, what are the leadership behaviors that are driving this success. So that's our charge this evening. What's also true is I have the unenviable task of managing our time, something I'm classically not very good at. So I have a clock up here that I'm going to use to help us do so. So we're going to take about 30 minutes or so to hear from these leaders about the insights and what's driving their success. Okay, so to start, the key question I wanted to start with is, what support is needed? Given the current reality our children in our communities are up against, what support is needed to help them thrive? Okay, so I'm going to start with Pastor Johnson here. The Rock Initiative at Eastern Star Church is a transformative collaboration between Indianapolis Neighborhood Housing Partnership, Neighborhood Christian Legal Clinic, Recycle Force, and so many others to disrupt the cycle of recidivism and housing eviction in the 46218 zip code. Furthermore, the Rock Community Center for Youth and Children exists to champion the development of healthy, whole, and resilient youth and children in the Arlington Woods community and beyond, with safe, accessible, high-quality, and holistic programs and support services. So, Pastor Johnson, as the visionary, as the leader of Eastern Star Church, that has been a driving force of this effort, I'd like you to step back a little bit. What's your vision for young adult success in your community? And in your experience, what do you think it takes for young people to succeed amidst so many barriers that they're up against today?
Thanks for including me in this. I appreciate it. I'm honored to be here, especially with this group of panels that y'all have here. Our young people are up against so much. We're one church in 3 locations at Eastern Star Church. One of our locations is in Arlington Woods, 46218. It's one of the most economically deprived communities, not just in Indiana, in the nation, where when we started the Rock Initiative, the average salary in that community was $25,000 a year. So you talk about barriers, what gets in the way, poverty gets in the way.
Yeah.
And Sankofa School of Success, which is right across the street from it's an elementary school, right across the street from us, 85% of the children are in poverty. And sometimes the only food they get is the free breakfast and the free lunch at the school. So when school is out in the summertime, our church used to feed them, because there's some apartments right next to them, and so we used to feed them in those apartments so they would eat every day. And then another group, non-for-profit, came in and started to do that. And so just having healthy food options, you expect a child to come in clear-minded, ready to learn, ready to grow, and eating hot dogs and a big gulp from the gas station down the street. And so it's a food desert that is there. And my good friend Freddie Haynes is going to preach to us in a minute, but it's also an economic desert, and it's an educational desert until we had some partners to come in and help us to get it right. That school, Sankofa School of Success, every piece of technology in that school, our church provided it. So we couldn't wait on the government or the school system to come and bring those children laptops and whiteboards and computers and tablets. Our church provided that. For many of us, that's normal for our kids, not when your parent is making $25,000 a year and have 3 children. And so we believe that education is significant and important. You talk about how does this help young people? Well, we start from preschool, child care, early learning, education, then the Sankofa School of Success, which is an elementary school, and then Rooted School, Indianapolis, the middle school and the high school meets on our campus. The scholarships that we give away, I see some Lilly people in here. Lilly Foundation helped us to build a community center, and we provide the programming and the staffing. And so we do STEM, and the young people get tutored, and they get mentored. We teach them culinary, we teach them computers and coding and so many other STEM and so many other things, so that we are helping them to get what they need in order to be successful in life. Am I within the time limit?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. He's good. He's good. If you've ever seen this man preach, he knows what he's doing. So you made a choice, Pastor Johnson, to bring Rooted School to Indianapolis and to Eastern Star Church. It's physically located within Eastern Star Church. Can you say a bit more about what was initially appealing there? And then, Mayat, we're going to turn to you.
Well, I'm going to try not to get in Mayat's way, who's doing a wonderful job at Rooted School, when she tells you the vision of the school. And actually, the vision of Rooted School of Indianapolis and Eastern Star Church, it lined up together. So it was a no-brainer. Mayat was part of our ministry in our church. The Mind Trust was one of our partners. And Mayat, you're getting ready to hear her talk in a minute, is brilliant. And then the exposure, experience, and education she was able to get with Rooted School getting ready to start. They needed a facility. We had one. And we had space, and it's one of the best facilities in Indianapolis when it comes to education. And then the partnership that we offer with volunteers, with mentors, with tutors, and a few dollars every now and then, and so that they can live out that vision and that goal that they have. So it was easy for us to make that decision. We believe that one of the goals of the Rock Initiative is enhancing the neighborhood. And if we're going to have a great neighborhood, you got to have great schools. You got to get that education piece right. So from preschool, child care, all the way up now to Rooted School with their high school, and we're preparing young people to get ready to go to college, and we're able to make that happen. And then the rest of our ministry is so holistic. Whatever their need is, we can come alongside.
Love it, love it. Mayat, let's turn to you. So tell us about Rooted School Indianapolis. What's the vision? What's the mission? What outcomes are you after with young people?
Yeah, thank you for having me as well. I'm happy to be here with colleagues and you, Amr. Good to see you as always. So if there is not a shift in the U.S. policy, the research shows that it's going to take 228 years for the average African American to gain the same amount of wealth as the average white American, and 84 years for the average Latinx family to gain that same amount of wealth. And so the mission of Rooted is to provide students personal pathways to financial freedom by increasing the number of students who graduate from high school, college, or technical school ready to compete in the city's high growth, high wage industry, starting with the tech sector. And then for me, it's really personal because there's this idea and belief that your zip code determines your destiny. And although I didn't grow up in the Arlington Woods area, I grew up about 5 blocks on the east side, and I was a part of the busing. And so with busing, I was bused to a township school where you were supposed to be provided with all types of opportunity and access, which I was. And so the goal and the reason why we wanted to be in Arlington Woods was so that students didn't have to leave their neighborhood for high quality education. And so we partner with Eastern Star, as Pastor Johnson said, as part of the ROC initiative to make sure that students don't have to leave and that they have high quality education.
So I was at the first graduating class this past summer of Rooted School Indianapolis. It was a raucous and mighty crowd. And if you look at the list of what kids are doing that are graduating, it's so inspiring. So tell us a bit about what the outcomes are with your first graduating class and what it's making you think about the next couple graduating classes that are coming up.
Right, so for the number of students who started and ended with us, we had 100% graduation. And so again, when we talked about our goal is, thank you. Our goal is not to determine their future and the path for them, but to provide them with those opportunities. And so some of the programs that Pastor Johnson talked about where we partner with the ROC, with STEM, and with tech. So 5 of our students received tech certifications that provided them with jobs through Eastern Star Church in their partnership with a company called TechServe. And so then our other students, they were accepted to colleges, they are going into the workforce. And so we're excited that all of our students, that we're tracking all of them, and they all are able to, they all are in a position where they're able to be successful.
Tell us a bit about this kind of partnership between a faith institution and a school is not non-existent, but rare. Mm-hmm. So tell us a bit about what the relationship between Rooted and Eastern Star looks like, Rooted and the ROC initiative, and how it supports you, Mayat, to carry out your mission.
So again, we partner, so it is a pre-K through 12, and then really through college continuum. And so we partner with the people at the ROC Center to be able to provide services. And so one, Pastor Johnson talked about just a facility. And so we know how hard it is to provide spaces for students. And so we have that facility. Our students also take classes over there at the ROC. And so they are able to go, so it's like a campus where they're able to go from the church to the ROC Center. And then our students take classes where they partner with different companies who come in. And so one thing is that on Fridays, our students are in tech certification classes where they're able to get tech certifications.
Yeah, love it. So I wanted to sort of pull out a little bit, a couple key leadership insights I'm hearing. One is in Pastor Johnson, there was a deep understanding of the local community, understanding of both the profound assets and beauty of the local community, as well as the challenges, especially youth, we're up against. And a conviction to do something about it. And then a belief that didn't have to build everything out internally. There are partners with skills and expertise through savvy relationships and savvy partnerships you could bring in-house to address these issues. Yeah.
I want to say one more thing before we pass the mic down further. Before we did the ROC, we sat down with the community. What do y'all want over here? What do y'all need? We didn't go in there saying, y'all need this school, y'all need this, what do y'all want in this community? And then after we talked to the community, then we were able to put a plan together to come alongside to make sure we could get somebody like Rooted School in there to help with the education.
Love it. All right. Let's give a round of applause there. So Joe, let's turn it to you. So Joe Bowling. Joe, you have been a long-standing leader in your neighborhood. You're
calling me old.
No.
That's what long-standing means.
Have some years young at heart. So can you share with us how residents in particular were doing in your community and what has become your and Inglewood Community Development Corporation's vision, therefore, and approach to support them?
Yeah, thank you. And it is humbling to be with you guys, but I know so many of y'all in the audience, and so many of y'all have been my teachers and mentors, and could easily just be sitting in this seat and delivering this kind of remarks as well. A little context. Englewood Christian Church, planted in 1895 at 57 North Rural Street. That's about East Washington Street and Rural Street. Had been there for 100 or so years, and my dad moved our family. My dad is one of the pastors. Moved our family in 1993 to the Englewood neighborhood when I was in high school. So have lived there in about 1996 or so when I was in college. That congregation really kind of did three things. First, they decided together that they would really encourage one another and facilitate a move back into the Englewood neighborhood that the church had pretty much abandoned in terms of living in that neighborhood. And that has flipped from about 5% living in the neighborhood to today 75% or more, 80% that live within 3 or 4 blocks of that church building, kind of right there at 57 North Rural Street. Secondly, in 1996, they started Daystar Childcare, which has now been in existence for 28 years. My mom has been a co-director there for the Child Care Center, serving 175 kids in that school within the church building each and every day. My kids have worked there. My wife has worked there, nieces and nephews, etc. And then they started Englewood Community Development Corporation, which I now lead, in 1996 as well. And so you can imagine for Sunday lunches after church around our table in the dining room, a lot of conversations for 28 years have been about community, school, and church, and the ways that they interact together, etc. So that has just been the environment that we've been in for many, many years. We had the opportunity in about 2014 or so as Englewood CDC with the church, with the neighborhood, to do kind of a community visioning process. You're going to hear some similar beats to what Pastor Johnson said. And it really was a moment where we could kind of say, hey, what do we want to be for the next decade as a community? Identified as one of our major challenges was the lack of high-quality schools that would serve our neighborhood. That was identified. But the biggest opportunity that was kind of raised up was the historic P.R. Mallory campus at 3029 East Washington Street. That's the home of the Duracell battery. That is where scientists developed alloys to enable the Apollo 11 space shuttle mission. So a science and technology background for 50 or so years that went vacant in the 70s and had been vacant then for 40 years, right smack dab in the middle of our neighborhood that used to have 1,500 people working there. So we had just this big hole in the middle of our neighborhood that was once the center of economic development. And so it was identified as our greatest challenge, opportunity, and certainly the lack of schools was our greatest kind of challenge. And so it was really kind of a moment to kind of put those two things together. That happened right as Purdue announced their plans to start a polytechnic high school, and it was just kind of the confluence of those things coming together. And guys, I'll have to say, for many of you like me who are followers in the way of Jesus and care about peacemaking, there was this irresistible swords into plowshares kind of opportunity where P.R. Mallory was part of, this is ungenerous, but was part of that war machine. They made automatic timers to more effectively drop bombs on people as part of the war effort. And we saw an opportunity to partner with Purdue to create this next generation of science, technology, leaders in the way of kind of putting community first, putting our black and brown and kind of under-resourced kind of neighbors first in the same spot where a lot of that activity happened for the better part of 50 years. So that was 2015 or so. The next 4 years, we're really trying to kind of put partnerships together, raise capital, and in 2019 we started construction on a $38 million renovation project to that historic campus where Purdue Polytechnic High School and Paramount Englewood Middle School have both co-located, so 6th grade through 12th grade in one building on that campus, where we get to kind of be, as Englewood CDC, owner, property manager, and service provider to about 1,000 kids that come to school on that campus. And now each and every day as an organization and as a church, a worshiping congregation at Englewood Church, we're thinking every single day, how do we leverage this opportunity to knock down barriers that stand in the way of these families, in the way of the faculty, and certainly the students that go to school there.
Great, wonderful. Thank you, Joe. Thank you. So, you're probably hearing some consistent themes here, and we'll pull up and out here in a moment. Let's pass on to Kiana. Dr. Warren, so tell us about Purdue Polytechnic. Tell us about your vision specifically for student success, and then how's it going?
Love the question, and I'm so honored to be here. Thank you to you all. So Purdue Polytechnic High Schools was founded for an unapologetic vision of getting more underrepresented students, and I'm going to be specific on what that means: Black, Latino, low-income students to Purdue University. When you look at Purdue University, it's on the campus. It's not as racially diverse as the Purdue administration would like to see. It's not as diverse as I'd like to see as a proud Purdue graduate. And so one of the, in partnership with ECDC, the Mind Trust, the Indianapolis Public School District, we got together and we founded Purdue Polytechnic High School with the idea of increasing the number of underrepresented students into the school. And the personal vision that I have for this school is we want to empower students to build the future that they want for themselves. Not for some, not for most, but for all students. I walk into so many school buildings that serve mostly students of color, low-income students, and you see that students are not empowered with voice and choice. They're not allowed to be the leaders. Oftentimes, schools look and feel to our students like prisons, so we are here to unapologetically break that school-to-prison pipeline, and some of that is putting community at center, putting our students at the center, and putting them in the driver's seat. So my goal is for my students to live out the dreams that they have for themselves, and not something that was created based on the limits that are put on our babies, but based on what they want for themselves.
So Kiana, the mission, part of the mission of Faith in Action is to help us all as a community catalyze and help our kids and our neighbors escape poverty sustainably, right? So why is it so important with that vision, that mission of getting kids into Purdue, a school like Purdue, and being successful there? Why is that important for helping them escape poverty?
Well, the data has been pretty consistent that when kids go to college, they experience upward mobility, and we want students to experience that upward mobility, and having a college degree gives you more access and opportunity.
Purdue Polytechnic, you wrote about in a recent IndyStar op-ed, I think it came out, 2 weeks ago? I'd encourage everybody to take a look from Dr. Kiana Warren about the model of Purdue Polytechnic being project-based and personalized. So if anyone goes and visits, and as a next step, we're going to encourage as many of y'all that want to go visit these entities, it's a very different schooling environment, right? So say a little bit about project-based, personalized learning and the importance of that.
Yes, so the important thing about project-based learning is you want students deeply engaged in content. So sometimes if you focus so much on the theoretical that you don't get the real-world application and students aren't deeply engaged in content. And this is an opportunity. I really want to shout out Joe Bowling and team for putting us in an absolutely beautiful building that allows for project-based learning. Our school, specifically our Englewood campus, does not look like a typical school, and it looks like more of a tech startup. There's open walls, open concept that allows for our school model to work in a way that's great for our students. Personalized learning is really important because if you look at classrooms from 100 years ago and you look at typical classrooms nowadays, they look exactly the same. And so many industries are moving forward with the technology advances except for education. And so the importance of personalized learning is we know that not every single child is not the same, and every single child doesn't need the same thing. So we want to make sure that our learning environments are personalized to which each individual child needs, and there's a lot of voice and choice in what they do. And by doing this, we know that we're preparing them for future success. We want them to be the creators and innovators of technology, not just folks who use it.
Joe, you and the team at Englewood CDC had an interest and were a key enabler of helping Purdue Polytechnic, Paramount, and others come to not only Englewood CDC, but PR Mallory. Could you say a little bit about what the collaboration looks right now and what you've learned in the collaborative effort over the past several years?
It's a wonderful partnership. I just couldn't be more proud and more excited about where this has gone since we kind of cut the ribbon in 2020 or so, even kind of getting through the pandemic, et cetera. Kiana is principal of the Inglewood School, is a friend, Jacob Pachter, and Jacob said once, he sees his job as knocking down the barriers to make the teacher successful in their classroom within kind of the four walls of the school building. And I think I see our role as kind of an Inglewood church, an Inglewood neighborhood, an Inglewood Community Development Corporation to really work on a lot of those barriers we've talked about it already, that those kids bring into the school environment and the classroom that keep them from being successful, and to capitalize on a lot of the opportunities that are there for student growth and learning outside the school walls as well. And it pairs really well with kind of a project-based learning kind of environment like Purdue Polytechnic has. So we've been able to kind of line up industry partnerships or projects around the neighborhood. We do a lot with solar panels, and kids have done some projects on solar panels and have seen the various installations that we've done. Kiana didn't mention this, but we won the robotics state championship in the state of Indiana. And so even after the project was complete and they were in the school, they pretty soon came to us and said, hey, we feel like we need an auxiliary space for robotics to really, really do this right. And so we renovated a secondary space and kind of a neighboring building for the robotics space, building out with recreational improvements, et cetera. But again, I think part of it for me, and I think this is a lesson for a lot of the churches, hopefully we'll talk about this a little bit more, is kind of knowing your role a little bit. And so what Inglewood is probably most known for is doing affordable housing development. And so from the time that Purdue and Paramount moved onto that campus, we started to think, okay, if we're going to do affordable housing, how do we focus that to serve these schools? And so earlier this year, we completed a 40-unit, 3-bedroom development where I think 37 of the 40 renters in that development are Purdue or Paramount students, where we're really trying to give them affordable housing within 3 blocks of the school building and allow those moms and some of the dads, mostly single moms, frankly, with kids that have their kids in these schools to have affordable housing, to slow down that mobility that so many of those families, as Pastor Johnson mentioned, are just caught in that eviction cycle. And so we know, and the data shows, that if we can give them affordable housing, give them quality services, allow those parents to be more engaged in their kids' school and in that school neighborhood, they're going to be more successful over time. And so that's not us putting ourselves in the classroom. It's knocking down some of those barriers for families that are outside the classroom.
Great, Joe. So let's go there, and I want to come back to Pastor Johnson here. So as you know, many in the audience today are leaders and congregants at faith institutions. So what can congregants and individuals from congregations do to provide effective support to accelerate student impact? What are the opportunities? What are the dangers?
Okay. First, let me say thank you to members of Eastern Star Church who are here, and some of our staff is here because they do all the work. So thank you for helping to make all of this happen.
Yeah.
I'm very big on vision. People have got to know what you're doing. What are you trying to accomplish? A pastor, local pastor, texted me yesterday and said he needs some help because they need a 15-passenger van. Yeah. But he didn't tell me, what are you going to do with this van? Where are you going? Who's riding in it? Habakkuk said, write the vision. Make it plain so that people who are running can see it. People are in a hurry, and you gotta write that vision. One of my friends, Paul Taylor, was one of our consultants early on when I got to Eastern Star Church. And he was saying, if you can't write it, you can't do it. And people want to see you write it. And the Lilly Foundation is in here. Believe me, if you're going to get some money from them, you're going to have to write it. You got to make that vision clear, because money follows vision. If they don't know what you're doing, nobody's going to give to that. And so, and I know money is a big challenge in trying to get these things done. And, but when you begin to write that out, and then partnerships and collaborations. Y'all hear, and Joe was up here saying the same thing. And we partnered, and you know, and so those are important. Stop trying to do it by yourself.
Yeah.
And I don't know anything about education, so I'm a partner with somebody who's brilliant and knows about education. And the same thing with the affordable housing. And so partnerships are important. David Jefferson pastors in Newark, and he's doing some of the same things we're doing. And I met him about a decade ago. We're on the same board for National Action Network with Reverend Al Sharpton. And somebody introduced us, and they were saying what I was trying to do in Indianapolis. Here's what he told me. He said, what you're trying to do, the system is designed for it to not work. The system is designed that you can't do affordable housing in that community. It's designed, you can't do education at a high level. It's designed, all the banking institutions, all the financial institutions left Arlington Woods, and the grocery stores went right with them. And so the system is designed for it to not work. And he said, you got to get with government, because my argument when I speak to these government officials, you can't take money to Broad Ripple and pour it all out there and then don't do anything in Arlington Woods, and we all paying taxes. You get with government, you get with the community. Stop going into communities telling them what they need. You ain't even there. They built the highway so you drive around it. Ask those people what they need. They know what they want for their children and their families. So and then get with other churches, get with other non-for-profits, partner with people so that you can get it done, and get with businesses. We spend all this money in these businesses. Some of it needs to come back to our communities. And so with those partnerships, that's how we've been able to accomplish it. It has not been easy. And I know some people of faith, you only want to partner with Christians, or you only want to partner with the same denomination you with. For me, if you are for the poor, we can work together. If you for the poor, we ought to be able to come together, at least at that level, and make some things happen. And I'll stop with this. I believe it was Nelson Mandela that said that the true character of a society is revealed by what they do with their children. And so keep pushing, y'all, keep trying. What we did at Eastern Star Church in the Rock Initiative, it did not happen overnight. It happened over time. And it was not easy. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of meetings, a lot of planning. And I had to get help with somebody helping me to write that plan. Here's what I want to do. Here's what we want to accomplish. And get you some help with somebody helping you to write it. Because if you can't write it, you can't do it.
So, Mayant and Kiana, I want to come to you. You being school leaders, being executives in the education space, probably get a lot of inbound interest from folks wanting to partner or have different kinds of ideas. How do you think about the types of partnerships and the types of collaborations that are actually useful for you and useful for your students and for your families? How do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like I should have said, preach, Pastor Johnson. Preaching. What I look at is not from a technical standpoint, but from an adaptive standpoint of who can we partner with to marshal, share resources to be able to provide opportunities where our students are able to have growth and development to be successful. Yeah. And so when we look at that, there's this term of called turning outward. And so that's what we've been talking about community. You have to turn outward to the community and bring the people in. One, when you're talking about mindset, do those people understand that there's a shared responsibility of what we need to do as a community, right? And then once they understand that there's a shared responsibility, then we have to bring the people who are closest to the work to be able to make sure that they can execute. So that means sometimes we just bring maybe churches or we bring certain community partners, but there's individuals, there's families, there's parents, right? There's people in the community who may not even attend the school in the area, but they're impacted by what's happening in the area. And so we make sure that their voices are heard, and then understanding that it's the long game of we have to have comprehensive strategies, right? Mm-hmm. And so being able to do that then allows us to work together as a community, again, turning outward and not inward, to be able to make sure that we're being the most effective. And I think what you were talking about, they often ask like the question of like, what's our role? But I think the question also is, what is our role based off of the people who are already like living in the community, right? So it's not just what is our role, but for those who are already here, where do we fit in that role?
Kiana, what would you add there?
Not much, because she killed that. That was perfect. I think it's just so important to understand that we cannot do this alone. We cannot do life alone. And there are systemic injustices that have put us here. And we have to understand the systems. And there has to be a mission alignment. And that at the heart of it, we are a student-centered ecosystem, meaning we're not a school, but we are a system. And it's just, I would just emphasize so much how important it is for the ideas and the things to happen from the community within the community, not to the community, because that's been done for so many years and it's tired, and it's time to do things different. And so I choose partners who care deeply about our kids and care deeply about the work and are aligned with the mission. But she nailed it.
Joe, we're going to come to you and close out. I'm managing our time here a little bit. Many of the institutions represented in the room tonight, faith institutions in particular, don't have the congregation size or the budget of, say, an Eastern Star. Others may not have the legacy and history of your church, Joe. And so I'm curious, what advice to get off the starting block, right? Like, where would you get started? If you are someone that's in the audience right now that is saying, I am moved, I am compelled, for years I'm seeing our kids get shortchanged in our school system and get shortchanged everywhere else, and it's enough, right? We want to do something about it. Where would you get started? And then we're going to come to Pastor Johnson to close this out.
I've got a couple bullets here. I'm not going to elaborate on them, but I think hopefully you'll infer from them. I think number one, engage. Be in a lot of conversations with folks that are already supporting schools, with the sense of maybe coordinating and collaborating with them, but engage with a posture to listen. It's mostly listening. It's mostly listening into conversations and figuring out where you can help. Secondly, collaborate, and we're saying that, but collaborate with a posture without trying to get the credit. And guys, I'll just say this is one of these things that is a little harder sometimes for churches, because pastors feel put upon to kind of deliver results and have your name at the top, etc. And you're just not going to do this very successfully or for very long if you're worried about getting top bill and getting the credit. That's not what collaboration is in the very best sense. And so collaborate, but collaborate without credit. I think, and we're saying this too, know your community, but know your physical community and neighborhood, but know your church community and know what ministries you currently have and in what ways can those be a flexible resource for these schools. If you've got a food pantry, what might that look like for families to shop there? I had breakfast with Tim up there at Shepherd, and one of the guys at breakfast said, their church-school partnership looked like some of their members, they had 3 attorneys in their congregation. They knew their membership well enough to know they had latent giftedness in their congregation, and those 3 folks were willing to make some time available for a Saturday legal clinic for neighbors and for school families. And that's just a flexible way to serve that, kind of those schools. So know your congregational ministries, know your giftedness of your congregations. I don't think successful school partnerships are pastor to principal. I think you need multiple relationships, multiple points of contact for that to be a durable partnership over time. Pastors change, principles change. That's just the reality of it. So the deeper and the more points of contact you can have, the more durable that partnership is going to be over time. And then I just wrote, be creative, be determined. School partnerships take a long time. Partnerships are not the posture a lot of times of a lot of schools. They've got other stuff to do, and so you've got to be dogged and determined in order to kind of find your place for a partnership over time. And again, as I just said, be a trusted, flexible resource. Nothing makes me happier when I get a text message from Jacob Pachter, the principal at Purdue, saying, can you guys, I know this is last minute, but would you? And I make sure to say yes to every single one of those because I want him to always text me and to text me first. And shout out to some of the folks up there from Shepherd and from Elevate and from Bonner Center and from my own staff who are our partners because there's so much of this we can't do even in partnership with Purdue. It's all of us collaborating together to make any of this stuff happen for student success.
All right, let's go back here. Pastor Johnson, yeah, same question. So Pastor Johnson, if you're in a faith institution that maybe isn't as large a congregant base, as big a budget, as long a storied history in the neighborhood, how would you get off the starting block?
Yeah, and we haven't always been the size we are now.
True.
So you don't have to be big to be effective. And one of the things, even at our size, one of the things we decided to do with the Rock Initiative, that's renewing our community for the kingdom, we can't do everything for that community. I wish we could. And we had to decide we're going to go a mile radius. We're going to do affordable housing. We're going to do financial literacy. We're going to do education. And we're going to enhance that community. That's the four things we were going to do. You may not choose four. You may choose one. And just do the best you can do with that one. Because if you faithful over a few things, God will make you ruler over many. And so when you do right by the little that you have, because whatever you do with that little, that's the same thing you're going to do when you get a lot. So you got to learn how to handle that little. And so don't sit back saying, because I don't have what Joe has, I'm not going to do anything. God ain't expecting you to do everything, but he wants you to do something. And I'll stop with this because it's about, and Joe and I keep saying, collaborations and partnerships. And that's what it's about. My friend Mike Jones, and I'll stop. Mike Jones, who's gone on to glory now, he was talking about that it's different if you own a herd of stallions versus owning a herd of jackasses. It's just different. If a coyote attacks the jackass, your herd of jackasses, you got to come out of that house, get them in the barn. You got to help protect them because they can't protect themselves from their natural enemy on their own. Because the way they protect themselves from their natural enemy, jackasses get together, they put their behinds together. And when the coyote attacks one jackass, that one jackass starts to kick. And then all the jackasses start kicking. But they kicking each other rather than their common enemy. So you got to come out and help them. But if you own a herd of stallions and that coyote comes, their natural enemy, and attacks, you don't have to do anything with those stallions. They get together too, and they get in a circle. But they don't put their behinds together. They put their heads together. And when that coyote attacks one, that stallion starts kicking, all of them start kicking. But rather than kicking each other, they kick their common enemy. Y'all, we got common enemies. We got poverty. We got food insecurity. We got racism. We got injustice. We got common enemies. And my friend said, stop acting like jackasses kicking each other. And let's be like stallions and put our heads together and overcome our common enemy.
So that's going to be the final word. I didn't think I would hear the pastor say jackasses that many times this evening. So you might be interested. You might be moved. You might be compelled to take action. You might be compelled to take further action on what you're already doing, right? One note of encouragement we wanted to offer is Nobody has to do this alone. That's an underlying premise that we heard tonight, right? Collaboration, learning from each other. Learn who's doing what well and work with them instead of trying to recreate the wheel, perhaps like a jackass. And so as a next step, the Rock Initiative and Rooted School Indianapolis and Inglewood CDC and Purdue Polytechnic have been so kind as to offer up the audience an opportunity to come see the work that they're doing on the ground. And you might have your appetite might have been whetted here. You can ask any and all follow-up questions and actually see the work with children on the ground. So we'd strongly encourage that as a next step. We will have an opportunity, I believe, after the Reverend's talk for folks to click a QR code and get signed up for those opportunities. So with that, let's give the panel a round of applause. Thank you so much.
Thank you again to our panelists. Just the work that you do day in and day out to create better outcomes for youth is so wonderful. So thank you. Now it's my great pleasure to introduce Reverend Frederick Haynes, Reverend Dr. Frederick Douglass Haynes III, who has many titles and many roles, but a singular mission. As a pastor, social justice activist, educator engaged in preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ, fighting against racial injustice, Dr. Haynes pursues economic justice, empowerment in underserved communities, and transformation for the disenfranchised. Through alliances and partnerships with local, state, and national and global leaders, he works to fight social injustice, domestic violence, and poverty. His Thrive Intern and Leadership Program, which employed nearly 100 Black men, was publicly applauded by then President Barack Obama. Since then, the program has expanded and now employs men and women at a pay rate above the minimum wage. For more than 40 years, Dr. Haynes has served as a senior pastor of Dallas Friendship West Baptist Church. It has grown from 100 members to now over 13,000 members. Dr. Haynes and his wife, Deborah, have one adult daughter. We are just delighted to have Reverend Haynes here tonight. Please join me in a warm welcome for Reverend Haynes.
Thank you so much. Let me express my appreciation. First of all, I am just super honored, humbled, intimidated, and inspired to be in this space. As I think many of you know, I have been privileged to be in the historic, game-changing PhD program in African American literature and sacred rhetoric here at Christian Theological Seminary, which of course is the brainchild of the great visionary, scholar, genius, Dr. Frank Thomas. I have enough sense to know that in light of the fact that I am a student in this program, I should come to this campus and do more listening than talking. And so right now I am violating that, and I want to beg your forgiveness for violating that kind of ethical academic code. But I am greatly honored, especially to be here in light of what we are discussing, and at the same time, while many of us are processing a grief, a mourning for this country, yes, even this world. And so hearing the panelists who we just heard gives me a whole lot of hope. And so I am grateful for this opportunity. I also want to say thank you to the President for your outstanding leadership. Your opening comments preached, and I am indeed grateful to you, and I will be borrowing a lot of that this Sunday, so thank you very much. Let me also say thank you to Lindsay for your outstanding leadership You are faith in action, so thank you so much for modeling that for us. We are indeed blessed. I see a lot of familiar faces, so I feel like it's homecoming, and in an HBCU setting, y'all really feel that, but it feels like homecoming, Dr. Thomas, and so I am grateful. I got to shout out Gino Young. Gino is in our cohort, and he is the first. He and Jennifer Carter were the first from my cohort to graduate with their PhD this past May. So proud of you, G. God bless you. And also, I have to shout out Pastor Jeffrey Johnson. He and I were in school together at Bishop College in Dallas, now defunct, but never dead Bishop College. And I always knew he was going to be amazing. And to hear him tonight is like, so what I'm going to do during my presentation, a lot of what he said, I wish I'd put in my presentation. And so I'm going to act like I had it in my presentation. And so what I'm going to do is, when Jeffrey said jackass here, that's going to apply. And you already know what goes there. So, but I'm so proud of you, man. Thank you for your work and for your leadership. I got to shout out my dean, Dean Leah Francis. You're just the blessed. You're the best. Thank you so much. Our theme is healing and hope for our next generation. What a theme for such a time as this. Healing and hope for our next generation. It's big, rich town. I just come from the poorest part. Bright lights, city lights. I got to make it. This is where it goes down. I just happen to come up hard. That's a theme song from Power. Some of you are much too holy, so you would never recognize that. But the theme song from Power, in it, 50 Cent goes on to say something that is quite profound. I never took a straight path nowhere. Life's full of twists and turns, bumps and bruises. I live, I learn. And then he says, homie, I grew up in hell a block away from heaven. 50 Cent is rapping about the reality of growing up in poverty. 50 Cent, in essence, is saying it's an existential hell to grow up impoverished. Hell and poverty. It makes sense. When you think about it, Dante in the Divine Comedy has a sign over the entrance to hell that says, all who enter these doors abandon hope. After all, to be impoverished is to be handcuffed by hopelessness. And the sad reality is, in the richest nation on the planet, we also have the most persons in poverty, especially young people in poverty, out of all of the so-called developed nations in the world. No wonder the Reverend Dr. James Forbes refers to poverty as a weapon of mass destruction. Poverty, according to Bishop William Barber, a study came out recently in this country. Over the last 12 years, the number 4 leading cause of death in this country is poverty. I never took a straight path nowhere. Life's full of twists and turns, bumps and bruises. I live, I learn. Homie, I grew up in hell a block away from heaven. I'm going to take the witness stand for a moment because, as you know, I pastor in Dallas, Texas, and there in Dallas, Texas, in 1991, Friendship West Baptist Church had moved to a site on Keast Boulevard, and there in that site on Keast Boulevard, it was an interesting time because we moved there, and unbeknownst to me, it was an area inundated with crime. Dallas in the 90s was really the Chicago of that time. Some 500 persons were being murdered every single year in Dallas. Of course, most of them persons with who were melanated. And we had moved to this particular community that was inundated with crime. It was crazy, but there was crime that was set up by poverty. And we learned it in a fresh way in 1996. We were in the midst of revival. Pastor Jeffrey Allen Johnson was wrecking the house every single night. I mean, that you heard what he just did right there. So we were getting that every single night. And Jeffrey Johnson is preaching. And I won't forget this as long as I live. We come out of church after a powerful revival experience. Jeffrey had preached. And when we came out of church, there was a crime scene across the street from Friendship West Baptist Church. We had shouted. Jeffrey had preached the word of God as only he can do. And across the street is yellow tape, crime scene. I found out the following morning that 3 teenage black boys, 17, 18, and 19, had been tied up, placed in a bathtub, shot in the head, a gang-style hit. While we were in church experiencing revival across the street, 3 young men were killed, ganglands type hit, while Christians were celebrating Jesus. 3 young boys across the street were killed. That was something that personally offended me. There was something about that was contradictory. We claim that we have the Savior who says all power and power has been given unto us to be witnesses or martyrs, as it were. And yet, across the street from our worship experience, warfare was going on, and we are talking about spiritual warfare in church. There was something about that was hypocritical. And I said, we can no longer do church the way we've been doing church. We have been content to have ministries while our church was a nice refuge in the midst of a community that was hell. That was hell. And so as a consequence, that following Saturday, we organized a march where black men dressed in black, and we marched through the community silently. We marched back to the church. In front of the church, there was a casket that was open. In the casket, there was a mirror sending a message. At the same time, our sisters and young people had waited on us back at the church. And as soon as we arrived back at the church, we prayed, and then we dispersed into the community to do what Pastor Johnson said, to consult with the community. We are now traumatized. We are shocked by what had taken place. Of course, as I'm saying that, the community is saying, nah, we're not shocked because this has been going on repeatedly. It's just been invisibilized. And so here we are going through the community, taking a survey. What are your needs? Where are you hurting? What are your visions for this community? What can we do to partner together to make this community what it should be? I won't forget what happened after that, because I then called upon every person, every elected official who represented that area, our city council person, our state representative, our state senator, our county commissioner, our mayor. I said, meet me on Thursday night at 10 o'clock p.m. and we are going to take a tour of this community. We're going to take a walking tour of the community. Do not bring security, because we are going to take a walking tour of this community. I got one of the sisters in the community. You know, black women are something else. So I get this black woman, and this black woman named Sister Jackson, and she and I are friends to this day. Sister Jackson, watch this. She says, all right, I'm going to take y'all on a tour. And we walked through that community. She showed us where drug deals were going on. She exposed them to the infrastructure desert is what some would like to call it. I really don't like using the term desert when we talk about what is not taking place in certain communities, because deserts are natural phenomena. You need a desert in order for an ecosystem to do what it's supposed to do. So I join in with others who don't call it deserts. I call it apartheid, which is something that has been structured by systems. And so you have infrastructure apartheid, you have food apartheid, healthcare apartheid, economic apartheid. That's what we have in these impoverished places. When, homie, I grew up in hell, a block away from heaven. In that hell is apartheid that has been set up by systems, by policies, set up by laws. And so Miss Jackson, she was showing us all that was going on under the cover of darkness. And my elected officials saw things they thought they would never see. And Miss Jackson then turned to the mayor. I won't forget this as long as I stay black, winter born. And that is, she said to the mayor, why? She says to the mayor, she says, Mr. Mayor, this is a sick city. Because, and you all are too young to remember this, but there was a TV show called Dallas with J.R. Ewing, and Dallas was just lifting up all of the excess of abundance, but never showing a certain side of town. You never saw the South Side. You never saw Oak Cliff, that's my hood. You never saw that on the show Dallas. You never saw that. And Miss Jackson was showing us the Dallas that you don't see on the TV show Dallas. And she said, this city is sick because this city is a tale of two cities. And she said on the north side, that's where you have the economic boom. On the south side, it's exploding in violence and poverty. And Miss Jackson said, how dare you call yourselves representing this city and you invisibilize the pain that's on this side of town. You talk about speaking truth to power. Miss Jackson did that thing, and all I could do was say, amen. Tell them, say it, say it. I'm backing her up, and Miss Jackson is telling it like a TI is. It's blowing my mind because Miss Jackson, in a real sense, was exposing elected officials to a community they claimed to represent but had spent no time in and they were ignorant about. And yet it's their policies that had created this community. Fast forward with me to 5 years ago, 2019, same city, Dallas. According to the Urban Institute, Dallas, J.R. Ewing, Dallas, Cowboys, Dallas in 2019 was ranked dead last out of 274 cities when it comes to economic inclusion. Meaning economic segregation is a harsh reality in Dallas, a tale of two. It's a big, rich town. We just come from the poorest part. I grew up in hell, a block away from heaven. I'm not done. 2019, another study comes out. And the study, Dr. Buggs said that Dallas ranks third in the nation in child poverty. Not Houston, not Philly, not Detroit, not Chicago, not cities we normally associate with poverty. Dallas ranks number 3 in child poverty. I'm offended by that. I'm offended by that as a person of faith. I'm offended by that as one who follows a Savior who said, if you jack with one of these little ones right here, I'm going to put a millstone around your neck and have you thrown into the sea. That's how seriously Jesus takes the lives of children. And yet Dallas, bragging about all of its economic boom and excess, is number 3 in child poverty. And to show you how this thing works, 2019, we get word that a company was about to, and we had moved to Wheatland Road where we are right now. We still have our site on Keist, and it's now what we call the Frederick Douglass Social Justice and Community Service Center. It's kind of like the hub of that community, and I'll tell you more about that later on, but we had moved to Wheatland Road where we have our current site. And what's very interesting is that there on Wheatland Road, about 7 minutes from our site on Keist, we got 60 acres of land. And adjacent to our 60 acres, there was 18 acres that this company that is headquartered downtown, they bought the 18 acres. This company is known, watch this, Jeffrey, they are known for building luxury apartments. They decide to buy 18 acres adjacent to us to build a truck yard to house 18-wheelers. Now hold on. You build on the other side of town luxury apartments. But now you ain't on our side of town, but you buy property on our side of town and adjacent to our church, wait, across the street from Carter High School. Carter High School, think, who can I tell you about Carter High School? Oh, Sha'Carri Richardson, Carter High School graduate. Carter High School, single family homes, apartment complexes all across the street. Our church houses a wonderful school. We're going to have to come get you to help us make sure our school is like yours, okay? But we have all of that going on, and they're going to build a warehouse, and watch this, 18-wheelers. Imagine that, coming down that street and pulling in to that 18-acre site. There was something that didn't go with that picture. After all, we had moved to that site in 2006, and with our coming there, we partnered to develop what is known as Unity Estates, the first time that middle-income housing had been built on our side of town. It's right around the corner. Along with our coming, there was a Target mall that developed. All of that happened with us, and now you're going to come from your perch downtown and build a warehouse for 18-wheelers. I did research, because you got to do research in this thing. I was taught here in class. Y'all put me in a class I had to go through with Dr. Robertson, and we had to learn about stats and facts and data research. And so we do our research and check it out. Dr. Robertson, if she's here, let her know I did my work, okay? I did my homework. And what I discovered is that, watch this, when you have these warehouses for trucks, that's a haven for human trafficking. And you're right across the school, from a street from Carter High School. And so from your perch, you're going to build a warehouse for 18-wheelers. Wait, I did some more research. Dallas, according to Harriet Washington in her book, A Terrible Thing to Waste, in which she talks about the impact of environmental racism on the American mind, Dallas ranks number 1 in the country when it comes to days that young people miss from school because of asthma related to the toxins they've been inhaling. And you're going to build a warehouse for 18-wheelers on our side of town? I don't think so. I don't think so. It ain't going to work out like that. And so I'm suggesting that it's a big, rich town. We just come from the poorest part. Homie, I grew up in hell, a block away from heaven. And here is the angle I want to come at this conversation with tonight, and that is that none of this is accidental. It's set up by systems that produce outcomes, structures. Jennifer Jones Austin, who I'm in conversation with about this whole thing around poverty. Jennifer Jones Austin, the daughter of the late great William Augustus Jones Jr., and she put his book back into print, God in the Ghetto, and she talks about structural economic deprivation. So when we're talking about young people in poverty, you've got to understand it has everything to do with structural economic deprivation. it's literally set up to produce that outcome. And that outcome is that. And then she gave me, watch this, a moving illustration, 2001, 2002. She's diagnosed with leukemia. And doctors gave Jennifer Jones Austin a 1% chance to live. Because Jennifer Jones Austin, 9/11, she was working downtown. She inhaled all that was in the air, and as a consequence, her body now has leukemia. And Jennifer Jones Austin said, the doctors said, you got a 1% chance to live. Wait, I'm not even done. The doctors then said that it's your 38th chromosome that has been broken by the environment. And watch Jennifer apply this. She says, in the body politic of this country, we don't produce, children are not born broken. They are broken by the environment. I got to go back and get you because I must have said it wrong or you would have been shouting with me, okay? Jennifer said my 38th chromosome was broken. It was broken in my body by the environment. Children, young people are not born broken. They are broken by the environment of the body politic. Jennifer Jones Austin says that they then tried to treat her with chemotherapy to make her comfortable. Got a 1% chance to live. She says, I'm in pain, I'm suffering. And she said, when you think about it, that's what's happening with children in poverty. They're in pain. They're suffering from what is called adverse childhood experiences. ACE. Adverse childhood experiences from 0 to 17. Kids who live in a big rich town but come from the poorest part. Homie, I grew up in hell, a block away from heaven. Those kids have experiences that are traumatizing, devastating to their spirits. Experiences such as seeing someone killed. Experiences such as someone in the family perhaps committing suicide. Experiences such as being exposed up and personal to drug trafficking, gun violence. Experiences where, in a real sense, a parent is missing because they are incarcerated in the criminal justice system that Michelle Alexander labels the new Jim Crow. And so all of that creates ACE, adverse childhood experiences. It's breaking children in the body politic of this country. That's what our kids are dealing with. They are broken by adverse childhood experiences. And so look at our theme. Healing and hope for our next generation. That's interesting. Healing and hope for our next generation. Last night, I was speaking in Baton Rouge for a scholarship gala, and I'd done my best. I gave a justice-oriented message around education, and the people, they were responsive, gave me a standing ovation. I must have been pretty good, and so afterwards, the president is all hype, and he gets up and he's talking about the social ills in the community. And then he says, and crime and violence is just out of control here in Baton Rouge. And I've made up my mind that we're going to fight crime and violence. Here was his solution: because some people deserve prison. I'm like, come on, man, I just had last Tuesday. Now I got to hear you say this after I get through speaking. I can't take much more of this. I can't take much. And he said this. Oh, yeah, I'm the one that's going to lock you up. I'm the one that's going to snitch and call the police on you because some people deserve prison. No, I got to say it right. Some young people deserve prison. And Jeffrey folk started clapping. I said, we done lost our crazy minds because you, instead of being upset about the environment that broke the chromosome, you instead are blaming the chromosome. You're mad at the chromosome, and you're not mad at the body politic that has produced the brokenness. And so the question becomes, okay, so how are we going to get to healing and hope in this day? And here it is, based on everything that is being presented in the Project 2025 world that we are about to live in. Now here, if I was in a preaching mode, I would go ahead and let you know that faith communities have always awakened the next morning of a horrific, nightmarish outcome and kept doing the work. If I was preaching, I would go here right now and just remind you that, don't forget, 1877, that Rutherford B. Hayes, in a compromise that never should have taken place, he said to the South, if you all give me your electoral college votes, I will promise to remove the troops who are protecting the freed persons. I'll remove the troops and pull the troops out. Hayes gets elected president. The Klan is now unleashed. Lynching starts to take place. And before you know it, listen, faith communities woke up in 1877, but it's in 1877 and years after that faith communities start giving birth to what we call HBCUs. Faith communities start giving birth, here it is, to not just schools, but also providing the settings for the first black businesses. And so we woke up in 1877, but we kept doing the work. If I was preaching, I'd keep calling the roll and tell you, we also woke up, when was it? In 1921, and got word that they had bombed Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma. But we kept on waking up, and faith communities came together not only to rebuild that community, but to build other communities. We kept on waking up. We woke up, I guess it was August 29th, 1955, when word spread that young Emmett Till had been slain in, what was it, in Tallahatchie River down in Mississippi. But somehow faith communities woke up and didn't just comfort the family, but kept on building. And as a consequence, ushered in the civil rights movement, because Rosa Parks, a lady of faith, gets on the bus a few months later and she says, you know what, in light of what happened to Emmett and the courage of Mama Till, there's no way I'm giving up this seat. And then faith communities became the headquarters for the civil rights movement that became the second Reconstruction. Y'all, we ain't new to this. We true to this. We have been in spaces like this before. And so that gives me hope. That gives me hope. And it's important. Why? Because unfortunately, my man who spoke last night, he had not read Matthew Desmond. Matthew Desmond has a book called Poverty by America. Not poverty in America. Poverty by America. Desmond declares that poverty is made in America because wealth is redistributed going upward at the expense of those who are already suffering. He said it's really how wealth is built in a capitalistic economy that was critiqued by Martin King Jr. that most of us like to ignore. Okay, you didn't like that. He was not familiar. Let's go back to Michael Harrington, 1962. I'm doing a lit review to show you I've been studying here. And so in 1962, Michael Harrington writes about the other America. The other America, according to Harrington, was the invisible poor. The invisible poor who were not only invisible, but were criminalized when they weren't rendered invisible. And so when you look at that, it just makes me wonder, where do we get our hope from? I want to suggest this. We get our hope from these areas, and I promise you I'll be done. We get our hope from a faith and work that is fueled by a theology of justice. That's good. Of faith and work. I got that from us, okay? But because faith ought to go to work. And last night, whatever else I heard a whack theology. I forgot to tell y'all this. Jeffrey, do you know what? No, Dr. Thomas, I got to tell you. Dr. Thomas, let me tell you this. Last night, they presented scholarships, and they gave them a Bible. And I looked at the Bible. It was a MacArthur Bible. John MacArthur. John MacArthur, okay, come here, because some of y'all don't know. John MacArthur has declared, he's declared war on wokeism. Doesn't even know what woke is. He's declared war on wokeism. John MacArthur has also had the nerve to basically say that social justice is a heresy. That's what MacArthur says. Social justice is a heresy. But last night I spoke at a banquet, a gala, a scholarship gala by a Black District Association, and they gave out MacArthur Bibles. That's a whack theology. Your theology, no wonder you blame the poor instead of trying to deal with systems that create poverty. Your theology is MacArthurish. We have a responsibility. Here it is, to develop, here it is, a theology of justice. A theology of justice, because justice, Michael Eric Dyson says, justice is what love sounds like when it speaks in public. Justice. So it's not about being political. It's about recognizing that there are systems that create outcomes that are harmful. And until we confront and change systems, our theology is not what it should be. And I see you looking at me right now. You're saying, but theology, Bible don't do anything with justice. Oh, but it does if you, I'm here. I've learned here. I've had class here. And so I'm going to tell you what I learned here. Gino, can I tell him what I learned here? We had a class taught by Dr. Shively Smith. Dr. Shively Smith was a guest professor, and she was teaching us this class on 19th century African American women writers. It was powerful, amazing class. Check out what Doc shared one day, just dropping a bomb on us and then moving on to the next thing. She said the most popular Bible, English translation, before King James did his, was the Geneva Bible. Here comes King James. When King James comes on the scene, King James notices, or his translators do, that there are words that are usually translated justice in the Greek, and he says, nah, we're going to do righteousness. And you get that because King James is presiding over a British Empire that has colonized countries of color all over the world. And so he says, if we have them seek justice and not righteousness. So guess what? It hits a little different when someone says, but seek first the kingdom of God and his justice, and all of these things will be added unto you. It hits a little bit different when Jesus says, blessed are those who hunger and thirst after justice, for they shall be filled. And so a theology of justice that says it's cool to feed the hungry, but I need to deal, King said, with edifices that produce hunger. It's cool to help someone on the Jericho road, but I need to fix the Jericho road and make sure there is lighting on the road, security on the road. I've got to have a theology of justice. A theology of justice, and really think about it. I want to talk to John MacArthur because I don't even know how you read the Bible without seeing justice. I mean, God showing up. I could go with how God showed up in Genesis when God said, let me holler at Hagar in the wilderness. Sisters in the Wilderness, Dolores Williams. I've done my lit review, okay? God shows up for Hagar and Ishmael in the wilderness. And then God ain't even done there. God says, all right, so in Exodus, I'm going to show up not in Pharaoh's palace telling him, hey, you're doing good. I'm going to show up on the backside of a desert and reveal myself as the I am, not to Pharaoh, but to Moses. And tell Moses, go tell Pharaoh, let my people go. And don't forget, even when God showed up to, and I'm still doing my lit review, and in my lit review, I got to tell y'all about Dwight Callahan. Dwight Callahan says, when you read the Bible hermeneutically, ain't it a trip that God is always showing up on the side of underdogs and blessing them to overcome? God is always going to the back of the line, and that's where God will tap a David and say, David, you at the back of the line, but I'm about to elevate you to the front. That is a theology of justice. And don't let me talk about the prophets, especially those 8th century prophets. No, I'm going to go to Jesus, because here is Jesus born not in a castle in Cairo, but he's born homeless in Bethlehem in a manger. Look at Jesus escaping genocide. Every boy born in Bethlehem got killed by public policy. And he escapes where? To Egypt. Hides out in Egypt. Blends in Egypt. And then Jesus grows up in the hood. He grew up in Nazareth. Nazareth was the hood. It was so hood. Somebody said, can any good thing come out of Nazareth? And if NWA was rapping back then, they'd have dropped an album called Straight Outta Nazareth. That's justice. And then look at his ministry on the margins, giving free health care to those with pre-existing conditions. Look at Jesus. Jeffrey Johnson would say he could take a 2-piece and 5 biscuits. And if you are food insecure, he'll bless you in a wilderness. Look at Jesus. Jesus, oh, I love this, leading a march on Jerusalem. Oh, yeah, it was a protest march. That's what honest scholars say, because you had Pilate coming into one side of Jerusalem representing Rome in order to control the goings on of liberation, aspiration that the people had during Passover. And Jesus comes the other side, and the crowd is saying, Hosanna. And of course, the religious overseers try to get the crowd to pipe down, because Hosanna means what? Save us. Deliver us. Jesus said, no, don't let y'all keep on hollering. Holler if you hear me. Jesus goes Tupac, and then he goes into the temple and sees economic exploitation of the poor. And he goes Parliament Funkadelic. I'm going to turn this mother out. When he got lynched on Friday. Lynched by the Roman Empire. And then if I was in a Black Baptist church, I'd holler early. Yeah. And here's the thing. And I learned this here. So blame y'all for this. I learned this here. We had to take Greek. And teacher taught us that even the word resurrection at its root has rebellion in it. And so when the stone is rolled away that was sealed by Rome, that means resurrection is an insurgency against injustice. That's a theology of justice that deals with empire, that deals with systems that create food insecurity, that create the kinds of things that Jesus ministered and dealt with. I got to give you something else, and that is that it's also going to take, and I'll make this my last piece because I see Lindsay kind of worried that I'm going too long, so I'll finish with this, Lindsay, and that is this last piece, and that is beyond the faith, working that is fueled by a theology of justice. There's also the importance of not criminalizing the poor, but instead criminalizing the systems that make the poor poor. I didn't say that right, did I? Okay. We're not going to vilify poor young people. And you see, I'm really working through my anger about what that clown said last night. And I'm going to have a conversation with him. I'm talking behind his back right now, but I'm calling him tonight to have a conversation honestly with him, because you don't vilify those who are impoverished. You don't vilify them. Instead, what you do is you look at the systems that have created why they are, where they are, and the adverse childhood experiences that have somehow poisoned their sense of possibility and made them to feel that there is no hope. A big rich town, I just come from the poorest part. Homie, I grew up in hell, a block away from heaven. 50 Cent is indicting this country because this country, in a real sense, got in the way of him becoming all that he could have become. And yet somehow, and I got to say this right quick because I hear some of y'all saying, but 50 is rich and all that stuff. God is so good. God, I got to quote Tupac, God still has roses come out of concrete. But just because a rose can blossom from concrete, it doesn't mean the concrete should be there. And so we have to, we can't vilify the poor. We can't vilify young people. Instead, we show them love. Instead, we recreate climates for them so they can experience real healing. We recreate climates for them so that they can know what hope feels like and what hope looks like. We recreate the climate for them. And when we do that, I guess I'll do it like this. Barack Obama, you know, he started this piece while president was really trying to reach out to at-risk boys. And so we had been doing a piece. Our Thrive program was a part of that. And Barack Obama, according to Ta-Nehisi Coates said that Barack Obama, after a class graduates, they've been mentored, exposed to all of this stuff. And Barack Obama says, what do you all want me to go back and tell people I know about this program? And one young cat raised his hand. And Gino, he says, program is great. It's wonderful. There's only one problem. We still got to go back home to our environment. And he said that the options still exist in that environment. So we've had a good time out here. But I'm about to go back to an environment that contradicts everything that you just taught me. If you don't change the environment, you can take us out and make us feel good for a moment all you want to, but you've got to fix the environment. You've got to transform the environment. And all he was trying to let Barack Obama know with gratitude for what was done, that in order to transform the environment, we need resources in communities that had been devoid of resources. We've got to bring down barriers that have precluded possibility and opportunity. You've got to redo the environment. That is what that young man said. And I see what's going on. I feel like I'm preaching at Jeffrey's church because y'all are feeling me. And I even feel a little church kind of setting going on right now. And you are ready to really get your praise and shout on. But you got one concern. You said Jennifer Jones Austin had a 1% chance to live. But you said you talked to her last night. How did that happen? Jennifer Jones Austin, I'm done. Jennifer Jones Austin told me, she said, Fred, here's what happened. They gave me chemo to keep me comfortable, but I needed a blood transfusion. Once I got the blood transfusion, that which was broken was replaced. And I've simply come by to say, that we have a lot of broken chromosomes in our community because the body politic has leukemia. It is sick. It is cancerous. And so chemotherapy may make them feel good for just a moment. It may do something nice for just a moment, but y'all, it's time for a transfusion. It's time for a transfusion. And when we have a transfusion, justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. A transfusion is Jesus saying, the Spirit of the Lord God is on me because he's anointed me to preach good news to the poor. Transfusion. Set the captives free. Transfusion. Recovering of sight to the blind. Transfusion. It's time for a transfusion that will give us healing and hope for the next generation.
I don't know about you, but I needed that message tonight. So another round of applause real quick. You know, I get a lot of hope by the presence of you here tonight, but also that each of you hopefully now are ignited to play a meaningful role in addressing poverty. And I'm going to use a quote that you shared with us back in 2021 when you were here. We need to be hustlers of hope. And that's what, if we are not hustlers for hope, we cannot have healing for our next generation. So I hope that you think of that. Before you go, I just need you to answer a quick survey, and then we're going to end with one final action item. So this is the fall event survey. There's 4 questions, and it should automatically take you through at your own pace. I'll let you keep filling that out, but I want to send the final message is just that we ask that you keep this message alive by sharing it with at least one other person in your network. That's how we can keep this hope and healing message alive. And then our final action item is that, you know, we heard tonight in the panel some great insights. Well, we just skimmed the surface tonight on that panel discussion. So we really encourage you, if you are interested, to sign up and go to these schools and learn more. They have so many insights that they can share. And Ryan, if you could put up the slide with the QR code to register. So these are the program site visits. We have one scheduled, more information to come, but really we want to connect with those who are really eager to make this next connection. So on that note, I want to say thank you for being here. Thank you for your time, and have a good night.